This is a series of videos about my open source project Loginbuddy. It's an OpenID Connect proxy, and these videos should explain how it works, and I hope you like it, and I hope you're going to use it. Thank you. Sascha Preibisch, and today I would like to introduce you to my open source project Loginbuddy, which is what I call a OpenID Connect proxy. And it sits in between your web application and a OpenID provider. The idea is to simplify support for social login in your web application. And the setup of Loginbuddy looks something like this. If you had a web application, you would usually have to implement or configure it to support multiple OpenID providers. Let's say Google and Facebook or GitHub. And in order to simplify that, Loginbuddy can do that for you. And you don't have to do any implementation within Loginbuddy. You just have to configure a JSON-based file with details of the OpenID providers that you want to include in your web application. So instead of your web application communicating to different OpenID providers, your web application only needs to communicate with Loginbuddy. And Loginbuddy will handle the OAuth/OpenID Connect communication for you and will return a single response message to your web application. And your web application can work with that. Before I continue, I would like to give you a short idea how that looks like. This page, client.loginbuddy.net, is hosted by me, and it's a demo, or it's an implementation of the demo setup that is part of the whole project. So there's this demo client which simulates your web application. And let's say your web application is configured to talk to Loginbuddy. And your web application will create an authorization request. The default request will cause Loginbuddy to create this website. There are two supported OpenID providers, Fake, which is part of the project in order to get you started without having to configure a real provider. And in this case, there's also Google as a supported provider. The third feature that Loginbuddy supports is OpenID Connect dynamic registration, which means if you have an OpenID provider which supports dynamic registration, you can configure these values down here, and Loginbuddy will register itself as an OAuth client and will communicate with your provider just if it had been configured beforehand. So this page can certainly be modified by you, but to get started you don't have to do anything. It will always be generated, and it will always include a button for any supported provider that you have configured. Let's continue with the fake one. So this simulates a real provider. I can enter any value because, as I said, it's just fake. It's just to simulate a real flow, a password, whatever you like, the consent page, which a server would display, the user hits grant. And the interesting part, what I want to show, is this response message, which is a combination of the content that the selected provider has created and components that Loginbuddy has added. And in JSON-lint it looks like this. Just using JSON-lint because it formats the message very nicely. So if you have implemented OAuth before or OpenID Connect, you will recognize these values: access token, refresh token, the scope that was granted, ID token, token type, and expires in. And the idea of this is to make it easy to switch to Loginbuddy for your application, because this is a message that can be used by your application since it's just the same as what the provider has created. And the additional fields will not break your implementation, at least not in most cases. So this field details provider will contain the validated and decoded payload of the ID token that the provider has issued. It will tell you which provider was chosen, and it contains the content of the user info endpoint of this provider. Secondly, this field details Loginbuddy contains, well, details about Loginbuddy. And the most valuable field that I think is this details normalized field. So if you communicate with different OpenID providers, they will usually have responses with different field names. For example, given name and family name will sometimes be called first name and last name. So your application has to handle these different names per provider. With Loginbuddy, that is not required because it will normalize responses to look the same always. And this is part of the configuration, so you can extend this list or you can rename these values however you like. Since this is just an introduction, I'm going to show you a little more about this GitHub repository. You can run it yourself. You don't have to go to this public page at client.loginbuddy.net. You can add this one line to your host's file, run this Docker command, which will occupy port 80 and 443, and it will pull the latest demo setup, which includes everything that you just saw. And once it is up and running, you can open democlient.loginbuddy.net and it will run on your local machine. You will have to confirm 3 SSL validation errors. This is because Loginbuddy only communicates with SSL and it generates a private key on the fly using SNI to simulate the client, Loginbuddy itself, and the demo server, which in real life would be 3 different entities with their own cert. So don't worry about that. And it also contains these wiki pages with quite a lot of content. I recommend to choose the quick start guide to try it out first. And in my next videos I will also talk about these other pages like the configuration and the different deployment models that Loginbuddy supports. And I guess that's it for this video. One acknowledgement, I received support from IntelliJ, so that's the IDE that I'm using. I can recommend it if you are looking for a new one to use. And that's it for this time. Have a good day. If you would like to learn more about Loginbuddy, please hit the subscribe button. Thank you very much.